Episode 5 in our 6-episode series. We are near the end of this 3-month arc, all about SharePoint management and how to make sure that you are compliant, AI ready, and under control when it comes to, or in control of your storage costs, which is the third thing I was trying to think of moments ago prior to filming when I was like, what is the third thing? That is it, storage costs. That's great. Anyway, fourth wall. Okay, as with all of these episodes, we've had, I've got Mia Tait and Alyssa Blackburn, Alyssa from AvePoint, and of course, Mia from with me at First Focus. Today, in episode 5, we're going to be talking about how to clean up your legacy file servers, Dropbox, Slack, etc. Because if you're going to really get true control of your data, you need to consolidate. The other part of this episode will be covering off how to manage information lifecycle and why it matters. Number 1, let's kick off with the first part of what I just covered. What does it look like when you guys get involved with a business and initially they've got data in a million places? What is that? How complex can that be? How much do they even know where the data is? And then how do you start to actually clean that up? Who wants to start?
Look, I think my team are dealing with this daily.
Okay.
We're day in, day out. No business is safe from this problem. I think the way you start, you need to do a stock take. You need to do a little bit of a reconciliation on how many platforms you are using.
And how do you do that though?
And
talk to the team, or?
The only way that you can really do that is start with literally noting down the tools that you are using, the applications that you're using, because I know that we are talking quite broadly here around documents really, but let's not shy away from the fact that there's a lot of other data types out there, and we have finance systems and HR systems, etc., and task management systems. Ideally, you want to consolidate as many of these as possible, but in some instances, it's not possible. So the first thing you want to do is kind of like a table of contents. You need to write that list. Then you pick a tool. We use the AvePoint tool, obviously, but you pick a tool and you can then do some analysis.
Okay, so the AvePoint tool lets you essentially, if you give it the right access, it can go into all these various platforms and start to really just give you a high-level view of all the data. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it depends. We are always coming at this from a lens of the document side, but I know we've touched on it 1,000 times over this event series or podcast series, but I think you need to be aware of it because of the changes to the Privacy Act. Yeah. So you still need to be at some point doing a reconciliation of where all of your data is, even if it's not focused on documents. But here, take the next step around focusing on the documents only side. That's when we're going to be using the AvePoint tool. You'll be able to assess the information that's in there, understand things like the age, the file size, type, all those types of things. And yeah, that's kind of the best place to start.
The other thing is when you've got that inventory, is what we need to think about is what's in there. So then we want to do like a little bit of a deeper dive into that kind of stuff, because not everything needs to come in and not everything's appropriate. Mm-hmm. So one of the industries that we see a lot with is organizations who have like a lot of large multimedia files or CAD drawings or things like that. Uh-huh. Like M365 may not be the best place for those. Maybe it is, but again, it's about assessing whether or not this is the 100%. right place. The other thing is these I'll call them legacy systems, for want of a better word, is they've been around for goodness knows how long. Like let's take a file share. Like who even knows what could be on that? Yeah. You do not want to just pick that up and put it, just straight into SharePoint, because all you're doing is taking one problem from one place and moving it somewhere else. It's like people have, they've hoarded a house, for example. Now they're going to move house. Instead of cleaning out all of the rubbish, they're just going to move everything. They're going to throw absolutely everything into a box and then re-hoard the house in a different suburb kind of thing. Like that doesn't make any sense.
And let's not forget the fact that is removal costs for extra data.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a cost saving element to that as well, because if you don't have to migrate as much as, as much as what you've got there, then that's a win for you. most definitely. So there's a cost saving element to this as well. So here's a funny but not funny story. We moved house about 3 years ago now, and it was 2021, so 4 years ago actually. So we were kind of just post-COVID kind of thing. So things were still a little bit locked down, but not too much. And my husband could take some time off work before we moved. I could take some time off work after we moved. So he packed up the house, and my job was to unpack the house when we got there. Except that my husband and I are very, very different people. And I love him a lot, but we are very different people.
Yeah.
And so when he packed up the house, he didn't label any of the boxes.
Yeah.
None of the boxes were
Bold
labelled.
Bold strategy,
and so it was very, very bold strategy. Anyway, we're divorced now, but no, we're not. He's lovely. But so when we arrived at the new house and he unloaded the truck, basically, I was like, well, hang on a minute. What room does that one go in? Or what does that go in? Or what does that go in? Or things like that. And he was like, I don't know. You'll have to open the boxes to find out.
Yay.
And then he waved at me and went to work. And so he dumped all of the boxes into the kitchen, because it was like the central place in the house, and was like, good luck to you. I hope it all goes well. And so when we're thinking about a migration, this is exactly how we have to think about it, is that we need to know, okay, it's coming from here. It needs to go in this room, or it needs to go in this room, or, and we can only do that by having good data to begin with, kind of thing, or assigning that as we go.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that you just cannot get away from. If you want it to be valuable in its end state, you've got to put the work in at the
It's so true, and we see it all the time with our projects, because we have kind of two types. One is it's time critical, get it done, don't care, and then it's like, okay, we've got the time, let's chip away and do it the right way. Now, the former, if you have a time sort of constraint and you need to kind of get it all in there, it's always red flags, but it's like, well, this is the risks you're running, this is what's going to happen. There's going to have to be rework at some point. Usually speaking, those businesses have less issues with file storage, and then they can on the other side have some time to organize it, but there is always rework with that, so there's always a risk involved, and some businesses might not have capacity to do that, so we try and offer the tools as best as we can to provide them with the information to make some tough decisions, but yeah, there's always pros and cons with that one, but yeah, if the businesses that can put the resources and the time aside on the outset are always the ones that succeed. Yeah.
Now I would like to talk very much about information lifecycle and why it matters. Who wants to define information lifecycle for me?
Me.
Yeah.
Me.
No,
okay,
this lady is all yours.
Hang on, this is where I sweep my laptop.
I'm going to
off the
sit here
table.
and take notes and listen like a little teacher talking to a student.
All right.
Okay, so all right, information lifecycle is basically saying that a bunch of stuff happens to information as it gets created or comes into your organization. Most organizations, it's getting better, but most organizations unfortunately do a thing where they say, oh great, it's been created and now we'll just keep it there forever. But there's a bunch of other stuff that might need to happen to that. That can include things like making sure that it's defined in terms of its sensitivity. It might be that when it's finalized, it needs to be locked so that nobody can make any changes to it. Because if somebody makes changes to an already signed contract, then that's a big deal kind of thing. We need to know that, yes, this was the last one. And then throughout all of these various things that might happen, it might not always need to live in the same place. Maybe it needs to be stored somewhere in cheaper storage. It doesn't necessarily need to be stored in the most expensive storage. Ultimately, we then need to determine, is this something that we need to retain permanently, or is it something that we can get rid of? And so information lifecycle can look very, very different depending on the type of information that it is.
Right.
Information can change in value over a period of time as well. So one of the things that I worked on when I was still a public servant was when the NBN rollout was happening, we used existing telecommunications infrastructure for that. But because that telecommunications infrastructure went in just after the Second World War.
Yeah, it was awful. HFC, copper. I was in the industry then.
Yes.
Hated it. Anyway,
yes.
yeah.
So I worked for the Federal Health and Safety regulator, and when the telecommunications pits were lifted, clouds of asbestos flew through the sky.
That's nice.
Yes, really enjoyed that. So we went from what should have been a relatively standard infrastructure project to, oh my goodness, we need to keep this information now potentially for hundreds of years, because if you have had exposure to asbestos, it doesn't show up sometimes for 30 or 40 years down the track. So we needed to then be able to track and trace all of the people who may have been exposed, which could have just been in like a standard suburb. And so that we could keep that information, knowing that we would be able to track them down if the worst were to ever occur. So information went from being, oh yeah, this is a pretty standard infrastructure project, to, oh my goodness, no, we need to keep this information for a really, really long period of time. So we need to constantly be monitoring our information to understand its risk to the organization, but its value, but also what stages it needs to go through. And as we've talked about a lot in terms of the Privacy Act, how long do we actually need to keep this information for? And it's not just the Privacy Act, lots of other legislation and regulation about how long you need to keep your information for. But if you don't need to hold it, it is a risk to you. Like, think about it just from a legal case perspective.
That's such a good point. And I don't think people have put enough emphasis on that. And I know in the event series, Andrew mentioned it a couple of times, like these breaches that we're seeing, a lot of that data actually shouldn't have even been there.
Yeah.
It was from old acquisitions and stuff that was like 18 years old and so it's not just about I'm scared to press delete. You should be more scared to keep it, to be honest.
Absolutely. It's more risky to hold on to it than not. Yeah. So, for example, I know we referenced this in the first episode. Go back and rewatch. It was definitely a great one. But I mentioned that I got caught up in like 3 of the 4 major breaches. One of them was the Optus breach. Except that I've been an Optus customer since 2003. But I still happened to get caught up in that one because they hadn't got rid of any of my information.
And the reality is that there's risk in holding any data, but presumably there's a lot of value in having some data. So where there's no value, there's only risk.
That's exactly obvious. Right. Then it's good to make a decision about. So that's information lifecycle as a concept kind of thing.
So creation, collaboration, retention, archival, and whether to get rid of it or not is pretty much kind of it.
Amongst other things, yes. There are other factors in that, but that's a good high level overview. Yeah.
Okay.
Good job, Brandon.
Well, I mean, furiously making notes. So let's touch on some of the biggest issues. Then we've got over retention. Definitely, we touched on that. We mentioned this a bit earlier on. I can't remember which episode, but the lack of ownership in some data is another one. If it's not actually owned, then it will almost certainly disappear into irrelevance, but still be maintained because no one's making the call around retention or archival or whatever. So what else? Actually, something we haven't touched on, lack of metadata and tagging. I don't know a hell of a lot about this. How is that done well, and what do we see done poorly?
Okay.
And what's the point of it? Is the other thing too.
So
searchability, presumably.
Let's break this down into a couple of different areas, and by a couple I mean 17.
Please don't. Less.
No, but it's a good one, and I think I'm really glad Alyssa is here to talk about it from her level of expertise, because even in the event series, what we were seing is people were like, "What's metadata?"
Yeah.
It's a little, and I'm like, you don't have to overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
But on that note, take it
All
away.
Take it away. Don't overcomplicate it.
Right.
Let's do this. Yeah.
Maybe not 17. Let's go 3.
Okay.
All right. Let's go 3
That's
things.
a good number.
The business case for information lifecycle can be really categorized into 3 areas: integrity, efficiency, and cost. Mm-hmm. So integrity incorporates things like compliance. Are we actually complying with the regulations that we need to comply with? Is our information described appropriately? So our Chief Information Security Officer, a person I love and has the best quotes ever, once described metadata as a love note to the future, which I thought was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But think about metadata from the case of I have an anaphylactic seafood allergy. Now that's a real thing. I have to carry an EpiPen and all fun things like that. I was in an airport in Nashville once eating a cookie that turned out to have Worcestershire sauce in it, and Worcestershire sauce is made from anchovies. And so I didn't realise that it was...
I'm going to say holy potatoes again.
I know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Holy slimy turnip was actually, the potatoes are too delicious. Let's go
That is
slimy
true.
turnip.
They are
It was that kind of situation where, but the metadata in that, so metadata is data about data. So the metadata in that case was the ingredients list. The cookie is the data. The cookie that I was eating is the data. The metadata was the ingredients list. And
What don't you have an analogy for?
Yeah.
what don't I have an allergy for?
No, not an allergy, like analogy. Like
Oh, nothing.
like a metaphor
Literally
analogy,
nothing in the world. So one of my friends and I, who's also in the information management space, she plays a game where she throws two completely random topics at me, and I have to somehow relate them back to information management.
Wow.
And it's hilarious. That should be our podcast.
Yes.
Anyway,
And the next one is then you have to wrap it.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean,
also
sure.
just SOS, analogy versus analogy.
Yes.
I'm hearing that. I don't
Anyway,
know the difference. Carry on.
So that is a metadata issue. Wait till you hear the story about the time I killed the queen. But anyway, that's a metadata issue. And so that's part of integrity kind of thing. And so if I had actually read all of the information about the cookie that I was consuming, I never would have consumed it, and I never would have ended up in emergency surgery 3 days down the track for a number of other issues that happened as a result of the anaphylactic reaction. So that's where we have to think about integrity of are we actually managing our information appropriately? Are we categorizing it appropriately? So sensitivity classification is just a form of metadata.
It's a tag against the document.
Okay.
Yeah. But important for a variety of other things. It's really important for reporting. It's important to be able to trigger other things from. So, for example, if we classify something as highly confidential, we then want to trigger a security process, potentially. So
I think people don't realise, but the name of a file is metadata.
I no.
So the name of a file is metadata. The date it was created is metadata. The date it was modified is metadata. Who changed it is the metadata. Who created it is the metadata. Version control is metadata. All of it is against that file. So it's additional information you can tag against a document. Then from that you can do all these other amazing things.
Okay.
And so that's all forms part of the integrity of our information. How can we prove what happened to our information, that we treated it appropriately according to our requirements and things like that? So information lifecycle, one of the cases for that, part one, is maintaining the integrity of our information and being able to prove that we've managed it appropriately. Second one is efficiency. So efficiency is all about how can we make things better for our users. This is a really interesting McKinsey study that shows that users lose about 25% of their work week. So if you work a 40-hour work week, that's 10 hours, more than a day a week. Is that right? Did I get that as maths right? Maybe. I think I did, yeah. I think I did. Anyway, tell us in the comments. Did Alyssa get the maths right? But 10 hours a week they lose, either recreating information that they can't find or searching for information.
Yep.
Now, can you think about a time where you've gone through Outlook and somebody said to you, do you have that email from this particular day about this particular thing? And then think about the 35 minutes, just 35 minutes that you spend searching for that, and then you're like, I can't find it. Could be anywhere.
Then you have to go and retype the email, summarize it, or go and create the document you thought you had attached. I totally agree. And it is, honestly, it is legit. And every single person, when we do an audit or we do any sort of project, the first thing they'll say is, we are tearing our hair out. We cannot find stuff.
We cannot find stuff.
Is zero.
We cannot find stuff to make good decisions, which goes back to integrity. Yeah. So are we actually making good decisions for the communities that we serve because the information we have is accurate and we can get our hands on it and we're being efficient? So if you think about, let's go back to our hoarded house thing. Somewhere in that hoarded house is your grandmother's antique ring, but where is it? You've got to get through all the cans and the newspapers from 1974 and the records that, we can't play anymore and are too scratched or anything, and then the CDs and then the DVDs and then the this and then the that, all of that kind of stuff. Can we actually get to the grandmother's ring? No, we can't, because there's so much other noise going on with the rest of the junk that we simply don't need to have. So we are hamstringing our users by saving everything. We're making their lives more difficult.
So integrity, efficiency,
cost saving.
Okay.
So when we're talking about cost saving, and the cloud has really changed it. So if I had $1, I'm really not joking when I say this, but if I had $1 for every single time somebody said to me, we'll just buy another server or something like that, I would have retired like 5 years ago. Seriously. So there are limits to cloud storage. So for example, there's 2.5 quintillion bytes of information created every day. Now that's 2.5 with 18 zeros on the end.
Put that up as a graphic later.
Yeah. So we're talking about, we had this whole thing about cloud. The cloud is endless. We can just store whatever we want and things like that. No, it's not
There's
really
actual
true.
servers holding that actual data, and there's an actual cost to those, and
Yeah.
just to keep them going, and the electricity and blah blah, the cooling,
Yeah.
So that's actually going to be charged at something.
Absolutely. And actually, another fun fact, I'm full of fun facts, but did you know that data servers have the same environmental impact as the entire aviation industry? Yeah.
It's a rabbit hole.
So there's a climate change. All I'm saying is that there's a climate change.
She's like, what? Yeah.
There's a climate change impact to information lifecycle as well.
Right.
In that, if you're not storing all of this data, then the data storage industry is the same as the aviation industry in terms of its environmental impact. And so, and we've got people now saying, I won't long haul fly as much anymore because I'm concerned about the impact, but I'm happy to keep 400 selfies of the same, at the same time on my phone, kind of thing.
True.
It's the same kind of thing. Like on my phone, for example, I have an
broken.
and my work here is done. So I have an iPhone, but like every month I get another thing from Apple saying, hey, you need to buy more storage space. You've got so many photos, you need to buy more storage space. And I'll admit that I am a little bit of a zealot about going through and deleting, photos and things like that. But there are limits to cloud storage. And this is unfortunately what organizations are discovering the really, really hard way at the moment, because they haven't participated in any kind of information lifecycle. They've just said, we're just going to hold everything forever. They've hoarded their house, basically. And now they're in this absolutely horrendous, situation where they're paying money hand over fist for all of this extra storage cost because they've never actually cycled through and said, you know what, I really don't need that anymore. So if you think about it again from our hoarded house perspective, what an organization has done is every single thing that has come into that house has never left it again. So every single time I open a can of coconut cream, I've kept the can. I've used the coconut cream. It's done. Its value is finished. It was delicious. Loved it. Thank you. Amazing. I've got a great recipe for coconut cream panna cotta. If anybody wants it,
yes, please.
Comments, no problem. But what's the use of the can? But because it's come into my house, I'm like, oh, well, I paid money for that can. I better hold on to it. Every single piece of junk mail stays in my house. Every single piece of artwork that my children create has stayed in my house. I've never gone through the process of getting rid of it. So now I literally can't fit anything more in my house. So what organizations do is they're like, oh, it's okay, we'll just go and build another room. I'll build another room on that house, and then I'll start cramming stuff in there.
If you listen to the previous podcast, I was like, this is not you.
Yeah.
Because you've done everything.
Throw your art out at the door.
Yeah,
so
well, that's true. I don't actually do that, which is why my house is not hoarded, but still somehow full of stuff. Also, you might think to yourself, it's all right, I'll go and rent a storage unit in a cheaper suburb, and I'll fill up that storage unit over there. Still it's not a terrible idea at all. It's actually it's a very reasonable strategy. But if you're still holding on to stuff that's useless, you're paying for space that's not serving you or not giving you any purpose, kind of thing. So there are really significant cost savings that organizations can achieve through information lifecycle, be that moving something to cheaper storage, or by saying, you know what, even in that cheaper storage, we actually don't need this anymore, so we're going to get rid of it. So 3 core areas for making the case for information lifecycle: integrity, efficiency, and cost.
Wow. Oh my gosh, my mind just wanted to getting it into Azure and it's sitting there. And then I bet so many people just leave it there.
They do. and that's why with some of our tooling, we've extended that information lifecycle capability to Azure, so that you can say, yes, I do need
so you
to.
can get the dashboard over the top of that. Little,
Yeah. So
that's
you do.
a little cheeky treat.
Yeah, you do need to have. I do need to hold on to this for 7 years.
But
I'm going
then
to hold
you
on to
can
it for
go.
3 in SharePoint, and I'm going to hold on to it for 4 years in blob storage,
Yeah.
for example. But then after 4 years,
Gone.
I don't need it anymore. If it's not been restored, if nobody's used it, this is the requirement that I've got under this piece of legislation or things like that, is to have that ongoing. We've talked about this a lot, is that person coming in every week or every month and doing that clean and saying, no, let's keep on top of this. Let's automate some of this.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about it. We've set our policies. We know what it is that we want to achieve. And now we're going to let the technology take care of it for us. But it's about having it from the time that something is captured or created in your environment all the way through its various life cycle stages, right up until the time that we say, this is something that's really valuable and we need to keep it permanently. And there is a case for that. That's absolutely, like birth certificates. They are something that you need to keep for the entirety of your life, and potentially ongoing from there, particularly if you're interested in family history and, tracing your, genetic history and things like that. Like, that's a permanent record. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's only about 5% of an organization's staff. Everything else can have an end date. And that's why information lifecycle is so critical.
Okay. I've been meaning to say this for a little while, but when you were talking before about just the costs of actual file storage, recently there was I don't know if it was OpenAI or not, but someone was saying that every time you say please or thank you to AI, you basically burn down a tree.
Oh my goodness. Somebody told me this the other day.
I did that this morning.
Stop being polite to AI.
No,
it doesn't care about your feelings.
Somebody literally
But that
told
thing
me
is,
this
I
the other day.
keep thinking if you're mean to it, when they take over the world, they're going to
Which
go
they
back
will.
and
Okay.
see the people that didn't say
So
nice
I
things.
am not
They're going to
even-
burn your house down.
I am not even joking. I have a
Your robo-vacuum catch
screenshot.
fire.
I have a screenshot, and I'm going to share it with you, and you're going to have to look at it, and you'd have no choice. But I have a screenshot of about 5 years ago. I posted, because I often post on social media funny things my kids have said, because it's my way of remembering them. And
What, your children?
Yeah. No, I remember my children. It's the funny things they say that I need to remember. But I think she was about 8 or so, said to me, Mum, you have to use manners with Siri, because when the robots rise up, she will remember.
Yeah.
And so
I'm not saying she's
in.
wrong. I'm just saying it burns down a tree.
Yeah. Somebody only told me that the other day,
Yeah.
and I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right.
Yeah. There's no need.
No.
Yeah.
And
we're all going to die. Why bother being polite in the meantime?
Yeah.
All right. So
what a positive note.
on
Jen.
that cherry note, I'm going to try and again wrap this up. The second part, particularly around information lifecycle management. My homework / AI answer says good SharePoint, good lifecycle management in SharePoint looks like every file has a purpose, owner, metadata, access is role-based and reviewed regularly, retention policies are automated and aligned to business compliance rules, regular audits, cleanups and migration from active to archive libraries, presumably using a great set of tools, and integration with compliance tools, with Microsoft Purview, sensitivity labels, and various other things. Does that all sound reasonable?
Absolutely.
Love it.
Go
Great.
forth and get it done.
100%. All right. Thank you very much, ladies. That is our 5th episode done for the 6th episode arc of SharePoint Focus. Of course, Mia Tait and Alyssa Blackburn are on LinkedIn. So if you'd like to continue the conversation there, please do. Otherwise, we'll be back in 2 weeks with the 6th and final episode. Thanks for watching.